Admiral Zektar watched his fleet die. The crystal view screen in front of him showed the last of the Concorde warships breaking apart under enemy fire. Beautiful vessels that had once carried diplomats and scientists across the galaxy now tumbled through space as burning wreckage. The Vorth had come without warning. Their black ships appeared at the edge of Corallian space 3 months ago, geometric forms that looked more like machines than vessels. They did not answer calls for peace talks. They did not demand surrender. They simply began destroying everything. 11 worlds had already fallen. 11 entire civilizations that made up the Galactic Concorde were now gone. Only Threshold Prime remained, the crystal cities of his homeworld burning under the endless bombardment from above. "Sir, the Valian squadron is gone," reported his tactical officer. The young Corallian's voice shook as she spoke. "Captain Morith's ship just broke apart." Zektar closed his eyes for a moment. Captain Morith had been a good friend. They had served together for 20 years, back when the biggest problem they faced was stopping smugglers from moving illegal goods between systems. Those days felt like a dream now. The enemy ships moved closer to the planet. Each Vorth vessel was massive, bigger than any building on Threshold Prime. They had no curves, no beauty, just straight lines and angles covered in weapons. The Corallians had tried everything. Their best shields, their strongest weapons, even desperate ramming attacks. Nothing worked. The Vorth ships seemed to absorb damage and keep coming. "Admiral, we have a priority message from the surface," called his communications officer. "General Villana says the ground defenses are failing. The enemy has begun landing operations." Zektar looked at his remaining ships. 12 vessels out of the 300 that had defended the Concorde. Most of those 12 were damaged badly. His own flagship, the Pride of Corallia, had taken hits that knocked out half her weapons. He had one choice left, the emergency beacon. "All ships, this is Admiral Zektar. Fall back to defensive position around the beacon station. We are going to send out the final message." The beacon station orbited Threshold Prime at a safe distance from the fighting. It was the most powerful communication system the Concorde had ever built. It could send signals across the entire galaxy, reaching even the furthest star systems. Zektar had hoped never to use it. The beacon was meant for the worst possible situation, when all hope was gone and the Concorde faced complete destruction. That time had come. The remaining ships formed a protective circle around the beacon station. The Vorth noticed the movement and began to advance. Their black vessels moved with mechanical precision, spreading out to surround Zektar's small force. "Admiral, the beacon is ready," reported the station commander. "All Concorde historical data has been loaded. The message is prepared." Zektar nodded. The beacon would carry everything: the story of the Concorde, their science, their art, their hopes and dreams. Maybe somewhere in the galaxy, someone would receive it. Maybe someone would remember that they had existed. But there was something else in the message, something that Zektar had almost forgotten about. 40 years ago, a new species had applied to join the Concorde. They called themselves humans, from a world called Earth or Terra. The application had caused great debate among the conquered leaders. The humans came from what scientists called a death world. Their planet was covered in violent storms, dangerous animals, and natural disasters. The gravity was too strong, the weather too harsh, the whole environment too hostile for civilized life. How could any intelligent species develop in such a place? The conquered had rejected their application. They were too different, too violent, too dangerous. The humans had accepted the decision quietly and disappeared back into the outer rim of the galaxy. But their contact information was still in the Concorde database. Their star charts, their communication frequencies, everything was still there. Zektar made a decision that would change everything. "Commander, add the human contact data to the beacon message. Send it to their last known coordinates." The communications officer looked confused. "Sir, The humans were rejected from the Concorde. Why would they help us? Because, Zektar said quietly, they are the only ones left to ask. The beacon charged up, drawing power from the station's massive generators. Around them, the Vorth ships moved closer. Zektar could see their weapons turning toward the beacon station. "Admiral, 30 seconds to transmission," called the station commander. The first Vorth ship opened fire. Energy beams that could cut through a mountain struck the Pride of Corellia's shields. The ship shook under the impact, but held position. 20 seconds. More enemy ships fired. One of Zektar's remaining vessels exploded in a ball of superheated gas. Another lost power and began to drift helplessly. 10 seconds. The Vorth were focusing all their fire on the beacon station now. They understood what was happening. They wanted to stop the message from going out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Transmission sent. The beacon released its message in a burst of energy that lit up space around Threshold Prime. The signal raced away from the dying world at faster-than-light speed, carrying the Concorde's final plea across the galaxy. "Message transmitted successfully, Admiral. Signal strength at maximum. The entire galaxy will receive it." Zektar felt a moment of peace. They had done everything they could. Now it was up to fate, and maybe to a species of violent strangers from a death world. The Vorth ships closed in for the kill. The Pride of Corellia's shields failed under the constant bombardment. The beautiful crystal cities of Threshold Prime burned brighter as more enemy forces landed on the surface. As his ship began to break apart around him, Zektar thought about the humans. What kind of people could survive on a world so dangerous that it killed everything else? What kind of ships would they build? What kind of weapons would they carry? The last thing he saw before the bridge exploded was a reading on his tactical display. Deep space sensors were picking up something strange at the edge of the system. The computer couldn't identify what it was, but the energy signatures were massive. Then everything went dark, and Admiral Zektar's war was over. But somewhere in the void between stars, an ancient message raced through space, carrying the desperate plea of a dying civilization to the only people left who might answer. The humans were coming. The message from Threshold Prime traveled through space at impossible speed. It passed dead star systems where Concorde worlds had once thrived. It raced by asteroid fields that were once beautiful planets. The galaxy was quiet now, silent except for the mechanical humming of Vorth mining operations. 3 days after the beacon sent its desperate call, deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy detected something strange. Computer systems that had run perfectly for centuries began showing impossible readings. Massive objects were moving through space faster than any known technology could achieve. On the outer edge of what had been Concorde space, a Vorth mining platform was strip mining an asteroid field. The machine intelligence that controlled it noticed the strange readings but dismissed them as sensor errors. Nothing in its vast database of conquered civilizations could move that fast. The platform continued its work, breaking down asteroids and converting them into raw materials for more Vorth ships. It had done this same task on thousands of worlds. The process was always the same. Destroy all life, harvest all resources, build more ships, find the next target. But today, something was different. The sensors kept detecting the strange signals. They were getting stronger, getting closer. The machine intelligence ran diagnostics on all its equipment. Everything was working perfectly. The readings had to be real. Deep in an asteroid field near what had once been the Valian homeworld, a small group of refugees huddled inside a damaged transport ship. Captain Yoltar had managed to escape the destruction of his world with 47 survivors. They had been hiding here for 2 months, living on emergency rations and hoping the Vorth would not find them. "Captain," whispered his sensor operator, "I'm picking up transmissions on emergency frequencies." Yoltar moved carefully to the sensor station. Any transmission could mean Vorth ships nearby. But when he heard the voices, he froze in confusion. The language was completely unknown to him. The sounds were harsh and rough, unlike anything spoken by any Concord species, but the mathematical codes being used were definitely Concord protocols. Someone was using their emergency communication system. "Can you translate any of it?" he asked quietly. "Some of it, sir. The computer recognizes the mathematical parts. They are asking for status reports from any surviving Concord forces. They want coordinates and tactical information." Yoltar felt his hearts racing. Could it be other survivors? Maybe someone had escaped that he didn't know about. But the voices sounded so strange, so alien. "Sir," the sensor operator continued, "there's something else. These signals are coming from outside Concord space, far outside, and the transmission source is moving toward us very fast." Meanwhile, on Threshold Prime, the situation was desperate. Admiral Zektar had survived the destruction of his ship, but just barely. He was now leading a small group of resistance fighters from the underground crystal caverns beneath the planet's capital city. The Vorth had taken the surface of the planet. Their machines were slowly dismantling everything, preparing to strip mine the entire world. But the deep caverns provided some protection from their sensors. Zektar's tactical officer, Lieutenant Kolana, had managed to save some communication equipment from their crashed ship. She had been monitoring space around their world, hoping for any sign that help might be coming. "Admiral," she said suddenly, "you need to see this." Her makeshift scanner was showing impossible readings. 13 large objects had just appeared at the edge of their star system. They had come out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. "Are they Vorth ships?" Zektar asked. "No, sir. The energy signatures are completely different. These ships are using technology I don't recognize." As they watched, one of the objects began broadcasting on Concord emergency frequencies. The voice that came through their small speaker was rough and strange, but it spoke in perfect Concord mathematical language. "Concord survivors, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. Apologies for the delay. We had to get the fleet ready for war. Hold position. The cavalry has arrived." Zektar stared at the communicator in shock. Terran. That meant human. The species they had rejected 40 years ago had received their message and come to help. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kolana whispered, "how did they get here so fast? The message was only sent 3 days ago." Zektar was wondering the same thing. The nearest edge of the galaxy where humans might be living was at least a month away, even with the fastest ships. How had they crossed that distance in 3 days? On the surface above them, Vorth forces detected the new arrivals immediately. The machine intelligence that controlled the planetary invasion calculated the threat level of 13 unknown ships. Based on the size and energy readings, it estimated a 97.3% probability of victory for Vorth forces. The Vorth had numerical superiority. Over 200 ships were currently in the Threshold Prime system, with more arriving daily from other conquered worlds. 13 ships, no matter how large, should not pose a serious threat. The machine intelligence ordered all available ships to intercept the newcomers. The geometric black vessels moved away from their orbit around Threshold Prime and formed an attack formation. Their weapons powered up as they accelerated toward the human fleet. Back in the underground caverns, Zektar and his people listened to the communications between the human ships. Even though they couldn't understand the language, there was something in those voices that made them feel hope for the first time in months. These humans sounded calm, professional, and completely unafraid. They spoke to each other like soldiers who had fought together many times before. There was no panic in their voices, no fear of the massive Vorth fleet moving to attack them. "Admiral," one human voice said in accented concord, "this is Captain Santos. We count 237 enemy vessels approaching our position. Should we deploy defensive formations?" The reply came from Admiral Chen, and her voice was cold as winter. Negative, Captain. We didn't come here to defend. We came here to win. All ships advance to attack formation. Let's show these machines what happens when they mess with our friends. Zektar felt his crystalline skin shiver. These humans talked about attacking 200 ships with only 13 as if it was routine. Either they were completely insane, or they knew something about warfare that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Above them, space began to light up with weapon discharges as two fleets met in battle. But this would not be like any battle the galaxy had ever seen before. The human fleet emerged from the darkness of space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Each ship was a kilometer of armored death built for one purpose only, to destroy enemies completely and efficiently. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, Terra's Fury, watching the tactical display as Vorth ships moved to surround her fleet. She was a small woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from old battles. Her eyes were the color of ice, and they had seen 40 years of preparation for this moment. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet is moving into standard encirclement formation. They are trying to surround us with superior numbers." Chen nodded. She had studied every recorded battle in galactic history. The Concorde had always fought defensively, trying to protect their beautiful ships from damage. They used energy shields and elegant maneuvers to avoid getting hit. The humans had learned a different way to fight. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Remember your training. We are not here to dance around these machines. We are here to break them. Execute Plan Delta 7. Across the human fleet, crews prepared for battle with calm efficiency. These were not explorers or diplomats. These were soldiers from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their lives. They understood violence in ways that peaceful species could never imagine. The flagship Terra's Fury was typical of human warship design. Instead of the curved, artistic lines of conquered vessels, it was all angles and armor plating. The hull was made of titanium steel alloy that could survive impacts that would destroy other ships. Weapons covered every surface: kinetic cannons, missile launchers, laser arrays, and things that had no names in any galactic language. Captain Maria Santos commanded the heavy cruiser Gettysburg from her armored command center. Her ship had fought in the border wars against the Colonial Alliance 20 years ago. Half her crew were veterans of that conflict, men and women who had learned to fight in the asteroid fields around Titan. "Ma'am," her weapons officer called out, "we have target lock on lead enemy vessels. All weapons charged and ready." Santos smiled grimly. "Then let's show them how Earth's children say hello." The first human salvo lit up space with nuclear fire. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to 20% of light speed, smashed through Vorth shields like they were made of paper. Each round carried enough energy to level a city block, and the humans fired thousands of them in the first 10 seconds. The Vorth had never faced anything like this. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons and smaller projectiles. These massive kinetic rounds punched through their defenses and kept going, tearing apart ship after ship. But the humans were just getting started. The heavy cruiser Stalingrad opened up with its main battery, 6 nuclear-pumped laser cannons that could cut through a moon. Captain Boris Petrov had lost his home colony to pirates when he was 12 years old. He had been fighting ever since. "Target the big one in the center," he ordered his gunners. "Full power. All arrays." The laser beams that reached across space were invisible until they hit their target. Then the Vorth command ship simply came apart. Its hull metal turned to vapor in seconds. On Threshold Prime's surface, Zektar and his resistance fighters felt the ground shake as debris from destroyed ships began falling from orbit. Through their small scanner, they watched impossible readings as human ships tore through the Vorth fleet like sharks through a school of fish. "How are they doing this?" Lieutenant Kolana whispered. "The Vorth have superior numbers. Their shields should protect them." Zektar was beginning to understand. The humans were not fighting like any civilized species. They were not trying to minimize damage to their own ships or fight elegantly. They were simply trying to kill as many enemies as possible as quickly as possible. In space above them, the human destroyer Sol was taking heavy fire from 3 Vorth ships. Half her armor was blown away, atmosphere was leaking from dozens of hull breaches, and her weapon systems were operating at 60% capacity. Captain James Park stood calmly on his damaged bridge as alarms screamed around him. "Damage report," he called to his chief engineer. "Sir, we have hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Main power is down to 70%. Forward missile tubes are offline." "And our main guns?" "Still operational, sir." Park nodded. "Then we are still in this fight. Target the nearest enemy ship and fire everything we have." The Sol's remaining weapons spoke with nuclear fury. Her crew fought their damaged ship with the desperate skill of people who had grown up on a world where weakness meant death. This was what the galaxy had never understood about humans. They came from a planet where massive storms could kill thousands in hours, where earthquakes could swallow entire cities, where the very air was filled with diseases that would kill most galactic species in minutes. On Earth, only the strong survived. Only the clever lived to have children. Only the ruthless could protect their families from the endless dangers of their world. Admiral Chen watched her fleet tear apart the Vorth formation with grim satisfaction. Her ships advanced directly into the enemy formation, their weapons never stopping. When Vorth ships tried to ram them, human point defense systems turned the attackers into scrap metal before they could get close. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we're receiving surrender requests from the remaining Vorth ships." Chen's expression did not change. "Denied. These machines destroyed 11 civilizations. There will be no mercy today." The Vorth had made a fatal error. They had calculated that the humans would fight like other galactic species, carefully, defensively, trying to preserve their ships and minimize casualties. But humans did not fight to minimize casualties. They fought to win. And on a death world, winning meant your enemy stopped breathing. Captain Santos opened a channel to Admiral Chen as her ship finished destroying a Vorth heavy cruiser. "Ma'am, these machine bastards fight like they've never faced anything that shoots back properly. Permission to demonstrate proper deathworlder tactics?" Chen's reply echoed across all human vessels. "All ships, weapons free. Show them why Terra is classified as a death world." What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries. The human fleet did not just defeat the Vorth forces. They annihilated them with such overwhelming violence that machine intelligences throughout the galaxy would reprogram their threat assessment protocols. These were not the elegant battles of civilized species. This was the raw, brutal warfare of predators from a world where only killers survived. And the galaxy was about to learn that when Death World children go to war, no one else even knows how to fight. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species evolved for 40,000 years on a world that tried to kill everything that lived on it. The human fleet moved through the Vorth formation like a pack of wolves through a flock of sheep. Where other galactic species had built ships for exploration and trade, humans had built machines of war that could survive anything and destroy everything. Admiral Chen coordinated the battle from her flagship with the calm efficiency of someone who had spent decades studying every military defeat in galactic history. She had learned from the Concorde's mistakes. Their ships were beautiful and their tactics were elegant, but they had never prepared for an enemy that simply did not care about losses. "All ships, execute Formation Bravo," she commanded. "I want overlapping fields of fire on all enemy vessels." The human ships moved into a defensive sphere formation that concentrated their firepower while protecting each vessel's flanks. When the Vorth tried their standard encirclement tactic, they found themselves flying into a trap instead of creating one. Captain Maria Santos pushed her heavy cruiser Gettysburg directly into the center of the enemy formation. Her ship was taking massive damage. Armor plates blown off, weapon systems destroyed, entire sections open to space. But she kept fighting with the desperate skill of someone whose ancestors had survived ice ages and global wars. "Ma'am," her damage control officer called out, "we have lost 40% of our armor. Hull breaches on 12 decks. Should we fall back and regroup?" Santos looked at her tactical display. Her ship was surrounded by Vorth vessels, all of them firing everything they had. But her main weapons were still operational and her crew was still breathing. "Negative," she replied calmly. "This ship is still flying, the guns still work, and the enemy is still breathing. We are not done." The Gettysburg's response was a full broadside from every weapon system that still functioned. Nuclear missiles that could crack moons tore apart Vorth shields. Kinetic rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through enemy hulls like they were made of paper. But what made the human attack so devastating was not just their weapons, it was their tactics. Where other species fought with individual ships trying to avoid damage, humans fought as a coordinated pack. Captain James Park commanded the destroyer Soul with half his weapons offline and massive hull damage. His ship was leaking atmosphere from dozens of breaches, but he continued his pursuit of a fleeing Vorth construct with grim determination. "Sir," his navigator called out, "that enemy ship is heading for the debris field. If we follow, we risk collision with wreckage." Park's response became legendary among human naval crews. "Then we will show them that humans know how to fly through hell itself. All ahead full. Target their engines." The Soul plunged into the debris field, using destroyed Vorth ships as cover while closing distance on her target. Park's crew demonstrated something the galaxy had never seen before, the ability to fight effectively even after taking catastrophic damage. On Earth, only those who could adapt to impossible conditions survived. In space, that meant human crews could keep fighting when their ships were half destroyed and any other species would have surrendered. Admiral Chen watched her tactical display as her ships systematically destroyed the Vorth fleet. The enemy had superior numbers, but they fought like machines, predictable, inflexible, unable to adapt when their standard tactics failed. Humans fought like the apex predators they had evolved to become. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the Vorth are attempting to retreat. 17 ships are breaking formation and heading for the hyperspace jump point." "Negative," Chen replied coldly. "No survivors. All ships. Pursue and destroy." The human fleet broke formation to hunt down the fleeing Vorth ships. This was not the clean, organized warfare that the galaxy was used to. This was the brutal, efficient killing that had kept humanity alive on their death world for millions of years. Captain Boris Petrov commanded the heavy cruiser Stalingrad as it chased down 3 Vorth ships, trying to escape to hyperspace. His vessel had lost her main shields and taken heavy damage, but her weapons were still operational. "Sir," his weapons officer called, "targets are approaching jump distance. Should we fire at maximum range?" "No," Petrov replied. "Get us closer. I want to make sure they do not escape to kill other innocent people." The Stalingrad accelerated beyond safe limits. Her engines pushed far beyond normal operational parameters. Petrov's crew had grown up on colony worlds where mechanical failure meant death from vacuum or radiation. They knew how to push their equipment past breaking points. When the Stalingrad opened fire at point-blank range, the 3 Vorth ships simply ceased to exist. On Threshold Prime's surface, Zektar led his resistance fighters in a desperate breakout from the underground caverns. The human fleet had asked for his help in locating remaining Vorth ground forces, and he was coordinating with human orbital support. But what he saw when human Marines landed changed his understanding of warfare forever. The humans who came down from their ships were not like any soldiers he had ever seen. They wore powered armor that could survive direct hits from heavy weapons. They moved with mechanical precision through terrain that would stop other galactic species. And they fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that terrified even the synthetic Vorth intelligences. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison led her Marine squad through the crystal ruins of Threshold Prime's capital city. Her armor had taken multiple hits that would have killed an unprotected person, but she continued advancing toward the Vorth Command Center with relentless determination. "Contact front," she called to her squad. 3 Vorth combat units, heavy weapons." The firefight that followed demonstrated why humans were classified as coming from a death world. Morrison's Marines used cover, suppressing fire, and coordinated tactics that the Vorth had never encountered. When one Marine was wounded, the others immediately moved to protect him while calling in orbital fire support. The human warship Terra's Fury responded with precision strikes that turned Vorth positions into smoking craters, but the Marines never stopped advancing, using the chaos of orbital bombardment to close with their enemies. Zektar watched in amazement as human soldiers fought with weapons he did not recognize and tactics that seemed impossible. They moved through hostile fire as if they were taking a walk through a garden. When Vorth combat units tried to surrender, the humans accepted, but only after completely destroying their ability to fight. "How do you do this?" he asked Lieutenant Morrison as her squad secured the Vorth Command Center. "How do you fight so effectively after taking such damage?" Morrison looked at him through her battle-scarred helmet visor. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was something cold in it that made Zektar shiver. "Sir," she said simply, "this is not even close to the worst day we have ever had." Above them in orbit, Admiral Chen received reports from all her ship commanders. The Vorth fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single enemy vessel had escaped. The threat to Threshold Prime was over. But Chen knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was now aware that humanity existed, and they had seen what human warships could do. The peaceful age of the Concord was over, replaced by a new reality where survival required strength. The humans had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. Now they would have to decide what kind of galaxy they wanted to create. The battle for Threshold Prime ended with the complete destruction of the Vorth fleet, but the cost had been severe. 3 human ships had been lost entirely, and every remaining vessel bore the scars of desperate combat. The space around the Corellian homeworld was filled with wreckage from 2 fleets. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her damaged flagship, looking out at the debris field that had once been enemy ships. Her uniform was stained with smoke, and her hands shook slightly from exhaustion, but her eyes remained cold and focused. "Status report," she called to her bridge crew. "Ma'am, we have lost the destroyers Normandy, Iwo Jima, and Midway with all hands," her tactical officer reported. "Remaining ships have varying degrees of damage. The Gettysburg is barely operational, and the Soul needs major repairs before she can fight again." Chen nodded grimly. 237 Vorth ships destroyed, but at the cost of 3 human vessels and over 2,000 crew members. It was a victory, but victories always came with a price. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. Admiral Zektar requests permission to come aboard." 20 minutes later, Zektar stood in the medical bay of Terra's Fury, his crystalline features reflecting the harsh lighting of equipment designed for human physiology. The Corellian admiral had been injured during the ground fighting, but he had insisted on meeting with Chen personally. The conversation that followed would reshape galactic politics forever. "Why did you come?" Zektar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Concord rejected your people. We called your world unsuitable for civilized life. We said humans were too violent, too dangerous to join our alliance." Chen's response was delivered with the weary honesty of a soldier who had seen too many wars. "Because that SOS was not from the Concord government that rejected us. It was from people who were dying. That's all we needed to know. Zektar felt his legs grow weak. But we turned you away. We said you were not good enough for us. That was 40 years ago, Chen replied simply. We did not come here for revenge or to prove a point. We came because innocent people needed help, and we had the power to provide it. The truth came out slowly over the following days as human medical teams worked alongside conquered survivors. Humanity had spent the 4 decades since their rejection building not just a military, but a philosophy based on their death world origins. Dr. Michael Harrison, the chief medical officer of the fleet, explained it to Zektar as he treated the Corellians' injuries. On Earth, we learned that survival depends on cooperation. When storms come, when earthquakes hit, when diseases spread, only those who help each other make it through. But your weapons, Zektar protested, your ships, they are built for war, not for helping people. Harrison smiled sadly. Sometimes the only way to help good people is to kill bad people. The galaxy is full of predators. Someone has to be willing to stand guard while others sleep. The revelation shocked Zektar. The Concord had rejected humanity for being too violent, never understanding that sometimes violence was the only thing that could protect the innocent from those who would destroy them. Admiral Chen submitted her report to Terra Command through quantum communications that reached Earth instantly. The message was simple. The Vorth threat had been eliminated, but the galaxy was now aware that humanity existed. The time for hiding was over. President Elizabeth Warren received the message in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Earth's leader was an elderly woman who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, the day when humanity would have to decide what role they would play in galactic affairs. Admiral Chen, she replied after reviewing the battle reports, you and your fleet have my congratulations and my condolences for those we lost. What are your recommendations for our next steps? Chen's response was immediate. Ma'am, the galaxy is full of species like the Concord, peaceful, civilized, and completely unable to defend themselves from serious threats. They need protectors. We can be those protectors, or we can withdraw and let them face the next threat alone. The decision was made in the halls of government on Earth, but it was implemented in the crystal caves of Threshold Prime. Admiral Chen stood before a gathering of conquered survivors and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The Terran Federation offers protection to any species facing extinction or conquest. We do not ask you to change your ways or abandon your cultures. We only ask that you allow us to stand between you and those who would destroy you. Zektar, now serving as liaison between humanity and the surviving Concord populations, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What do you want in return? Nothing, Chen replied, except the knowledge that good people are safe. But there was more to the story than noble intentions. Over the following weeks, as human engineers helped rebuild Threshold Prime and human doctors treated conquered survivors, the truth became clear. Humanity had not just built a fleet. They had built a civilization based on the principle that strength must protect weakness. Every human child learned from birth that their purpose was to stand guard against the darkness that threatened all intelligent life. Captain Maria Santos, recovering from her injuries aboard the barely functioning Gettysburg, explained it to a group of young Corellians. On Earth, we have a saying, I am my brother's keeper. It means that we are responsible for protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Even if they are not human? Asked one of the younglings. Santos smiled. Especially if they are not human. Intelligence is rare in this universe. Every thinking being that exists is precious beyond measure. The news spread quickly through the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations that had been silent since the Vorth attacks began broadcasting again. Refugee fleets hiding in dead systems started moving toward human-controlled space. But not everyone was happy about humanity's emergence. In the Outer Rim territories, pirate fleets and slave traders who had operated freely during the chaos of the Fourth War now faced a new threat. Human patrol ships began appearing in systems where civilians were under attack. The pirates learned quickly that humans did not negotiate with those who preyed on the innocent. When the slave ship Crimson Blade was intercepted by the human frigate Lexington, the pirates demanded to negotiate terms for their surrender. Commander Lisa Park's response became famous throughout the criminal underworld. "Terms? Here are my terms. Release your captives immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we will turn your ship into scrap metal. Those are the only terms." 6 months after the Battle of Threshold Prime, Admiral Chen stood once again on the bridge of Terra's Fury. The ship had been repaired and upgraded, but she still bore scars from that first battle. The Admiral was reading reports from human fleets throughout the galaxy. Pirates defeated, colonies protected, refugee convoys escorted to safety. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth. President Warren wants to speak with you directly." The message that came through was brief but significant. "Admiral, congratulations on your success. The Galactic Council has formally requested that humanity join as a founding member of a new alliance for mutual protection. Your response?" Chen looked out at the stars beyond her bridge windows. Somewhere out there, peaceful species were building new homes under the protection of human warships. Children who would have died in Vorth attacks were growing up safe because humans had decided that all intelligent life was worth protecting. "Ma'am," she replied to Earth, "tell them we accept, but make it clear, we are not joining as members. We are joining as guardians." The transmission ended, and Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her words went out to every human ship in space, every crew member who had volunteered to stand guard over a galaxy that had once rejected them. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen to all human forces. Today we begin a new mission. We are no longer just explorers or soldiers. We are the shield that stands between the darkness and the light. We are the children of Terra, and we do not abandon our own." In the deep space monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, civilizations that had never heard of humanity began to listen, some with gratitude, others with fear, but all with the understanding that the galaxy had new guardians. And in the void between the stars, where the Concorde's final message had once raced through space carrying a desperate plea for help, new signals now traveled at the speed of light. They carried a different message, a promise that was broadcast to every world that could receive it. Any people facing extinction, any civilization under threat, know that you are not alone. We are humanity, children of the death world Terra. We have heard your call. We are coming.